artificial intelligence, specializing in AI, specifically computer vision, robotics, and and a little bit of neuroscience in that. I did my master's also at Harvard University, mostly focused on neuroscience and computer science. So if you look at both my PhD and master's, I'm in this intersection of healthcare, neuroscience, plus computer science. And so part of my interest in neuroscience is because if you actually think about AI, most of the fundamentals of AI are based in neuroscience. For example, we're trying to build artificial intelligence based on the concept of how the brain, the human brain works. So by actually understanding the biology part of it, it enables you to build better algorithms on the computer side, the side of it. So that's part of the reason why I started, my master's in neuroscience / computer science, and then, going into PhD and focusing on then building the algorithms. My bachelor's was from the University of Northern Iowa in the US here. Also was focused on computer science and mostly it was my research was partly AI and partly digital electronics, which because I had more interest in like doing things in robotics. So that's kind of what my educational background is. Professionally, currently, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a professor at University of Juba, where I am teaching AI courses, and some of the things that I am doing there, I'll talk about in a few seconds. And then I'm also a research scientist at Harvard Business School, where I'm working on self-driving cars. We're trying to understand, we build simulation models to sort of understand how consumers would would perceive the self-driving car controls. So the question is like today, if someone asks you to buy a self-driving car, a car that's fully automated, would you buy it? So that's like something that you sort of have to think about, because a self-driving car is something that's fully automated, but you can also think of it as a weapon, right? Because it is something that can help you, but it is also can kill you, right? So when we're talking about, AI algorithms, usually we want to have sort of the certainty of close to 100% certainty that something is always going to behave correct in every single situation, right? And so that's the reason why we have to do all these studies on first the car controls themselves. Like, for example, if you have a self-driving car and suddenly a pedestrian crosses the road, would the vehicle react correctly and stop before hitting the person, right? So those are all things that have to be studied. You have to study not just the development aspect of it, the technology building aspect of it, but also there is the customer perception point of it, because if it ultimately consumers have to go and pay money for these cars, right? But in order for someone to pay money, you have to convince them. And so to convince them, there has to be all this research and all these, capabilities built into the controls to make you feel comfortable that this thing is worth buying, right? So that's kind of like what my research is focused on now, and we're in the process of, putting together a paper for publication. Okay, so yeah, so in terms of AI for South Sudan, so my foray into AI in South Sudan basically came actually about 2 years ago when my dad passed away. So when I came down to South Sudan, I was coming there to mourn my father, but then I had this idea of just giving a talk at the university, and that one instant blossom into into other things that I'm now involved in. But overall, like if you think about South Sudan, I mean, it's the same like Africa in general, AI in Africa. Like I think the first speaker gave a preview of why AI matters to Africa. I think it also matters to South Sudan. And I think in South Sudan, we have very specific things that we really need that I think AI can be very, very useful and can have a huge impact. And that is basically focusing on local challenges. And the three main challenges that I think, like when I think about AI in South Sudan, the, the three things that jumps in front of my minds are healthcare, education, and agriculture, right? So healthcare, you can think of it in many aspects, right? For example, you take a hospital like University of Juba, you have doctors who are limited in terms of number. Like you may not have enough doctors to attend to patients, while at the same time also having to do diagnosis on images, produce, like X-ray images and things like that. So if you bring in AI, AI can help those doctors by sort of facilitating the diagnostic part, where instead of the doctor spending, hundreds of hours inspecting images, the AI can do that for the doctor, and the doctor can just look at what the AI has produced and make decision based on that. So that actually increases the throughput of the doctor. So one doctor can, for example, with the help of AI, may be able to assist many patients, as opposed to having a backlog of patients where, there's less doctor and there's more patients. So I think that's one of the area where we can have like a huge impact. And so currently, and the things that I'm doing at University of Juba, we're actually doing some research in healthcare, which our target is maybe collaborate with University of Juba Hospital and assist doctors there. The second part is education. So education is actually key. I think it's not just educating students, but it's also educating, the public. Like all of us will need to know AI. I think AI is actually I think AI is sort of like reading and writing skills. Previously, if you need to get a job, or if you have to know how to read, you have to know how to write. AI is going to become like that. you know it's going to be basically all the tools, like your phone is going to, like I think the previous speaker mentioned, you have the AI assistants, you can speak into them, you can do searches, you can do pretty much a lot of things now with AI. So using these tools it has to become like a second nature. Like I don't think that there's a way for you, anyone actually, to sort of like live in the next gen from now onward. Like living life without AI is going to be impossible. You're going to be interfacing with AI in one form or another. So education is actually key, and that can come in many ways. At the university level, we can have programs that are specifically training students how to build AI, and then at the citizen level, we teach people how to use AI, and then we also want to teach them how to make sure that we're using AI the proper way, right? So, for example, the way people use AI in US may be slightly different in the way people may use it in South Sudan, right? Like there are things in South Sudan that, you know, are specific to the culture, for example, the culture and, the, the overall sensitivity, yeah. So it will be basically tailored. Every country is going to tailor AI to, its people, what is appropriate for the people. Like in South Sudan is going to be appropriately for, the people of South Sudan. And so that's something that also, like researchers has to collaborate with government and also like, the citizens. And then the other part where I think we can have a huge impact is agriculture. Because agriculture, like in South Sudan, we have lots of fields, there's, a lot of farms. And so we can teach, not only teaching farmers, but we can, build tools that can assist farmers in sort of like, producing, either producing more or sort of improving their productivity from the farms. And those can be like, for example, detecting crop disease, monitoring weather patterns, like when is it going to be like rainy season and how should they prepare and things like that. So I think like for me, like those are the broad scopes of what we should focus. we should focus on, but there are also other small things that we can do. Like we talked about fraud detection, like you could talk about the finance in South Sudan, and that's another area that could be tackled, and so forth. So the other aspect in terms of building AI skills in South Sudan, so my focus right now has started with the University of Juba. And so when I first engaged with them, I started by teaching undergraduate courses, right? So and so I came up with this course called Artificial Intelligence. So if you are a student at the University of Juba, in order for you to graduate, you have to take my course, and it's mandatory, which means, like, for example, this past semester I was teaching the fourth year students. So these are students who next year becomes well, this year they become fifth year students, and then next year they'll graduate. And so this course means that every student in that class must take this course. And so what I've done is basically I transformed this course to basically be like Harvard style. So Harvard is one of the top universities in the world. We've been ranked, number one many times. I don't know who is number one now, but usually it's in the top three schools in the world. But so what I wanted to do was to bring Harvard style level of teaching to University of Juba. And so this is one of the way that I'm implementing this in this AI course. So if you are going to graduate from University of Juba, let's say if you're fourth year or lower class, you're going to have to meet me at some point during your path at University of Juba. You will end up meeting me and going through this rigorous course. And the course is really, I've taught it for 2 semesters now, and it's really, in many ways, it was jarring to students because they were not used to, like, for example, something that requires you to be always interfacing with technology and doing something practical, and so forth. And now they are getting used to it, and students are becoming more passionate about it. And now we're actually building models and solving real problems. The other thing I've been working on was developing a curriculum for Masters of AI program. And this is actually, I submitted this last year to the Senate, and it's been approved now for implementation. And I'll talk about it in the next slide. And then the final thing is this incubation lab, which I'm heading currently. And the incubation lab is focused on building AI projects that solve local problems. So the problem has to be a problem that is happening either in Juba or in South Sudan, and we are going to address it using AI. And so we're going to we're first going to understand the problem, see how whether it's affecting people or not, and whether the solution that we propose or build will have an impact. And if it does, then we move forward to the next stage, which is identifying, what technology we can use, etc. So that's one aspect, working on projects. The other aspect is, as you know, building AI is not an easy thing. AI requires a lot of data, right? If you have good data, you can build good AI. And so part of what we're doing is we are collecting our own unique set of data, which is Southern Sudanese specific data, that we're going to train algorithms that solve local problems, right? So at some point, we may make that data public, meaning like we can share it with other institutions. But at this point, our focus is we want to gather our data. We want to see this data is solving our specific problem. If it does, then we can maybe at some point we publish a paper with it, and then we share it with other institutions. But the goal at this moment is like we collect the data and we make it available to the academic community. So if you are like part of your community, as a student, you can do research on this data. So for example, one of the data is basically we collect videos of people making gestures, right? Gestures, some of them can be gestures for sign language, some of them can be gestures for something else. But those are like one example that I'm giving you. And so we have several efforts in that going on. And then another big part, and this is one that I actually spend quite a bit of time on, is mentoring, right? So the student requires a lot of mentorship, right? Meaning like if you take a student from the US and fourth year, for example, of undergraduate, and you compare them to a student at University of Juba, at the same class level, the delta is huge. And so how do we bridge that gap, right? So one of the things I do is I do mentorship. So the mentorship is happening in many levels. Like, for example, one level is the one-to-one mentorship, and then the other level is mentorship that happens organically. Meaning, like, if I mentor a student, I want that student to become a mentor to other students, right? So that's how you propagate knowledge, as opposed to everyone coming to me, I propagate that knowledge. If I teach you, I want to teach you how to fish, not for you to come back to me and ask for a fish. If I teach you how to fish, then you know how to fish and you can teach other people how to fish. And so that's the organic way of how we're doing mentoring at University of Juba. Okay, so in terms of the graduate program, this has been approved and it's actually advertised. You can apply for it even today. There are 4 programs that are available at the master's level. There's the intelligence robotics. So that means you're building robotics that have AI in them. There's the edge computing and data science. As you know, big data is, one of the thing with AI. And so we need to build algorithms that can operate on massive amount of data and algorithms that can also run on, like devices that can be either attached to other devices, sort of like, for example, IoT, you're familiar with Internet of Things devices, something like that. And then the other is, there are also students who may be people who are maybe want to focus on machine learning as their career, right? So how to build actually machine learning algorithms, and, either you want to follow in the teaching path or want to do research in industry. And then the final part is computer vision, which is where you're building algorithms that can run on camera-enabled devices where you can process images or process videos. Yeah, so that's essentially what's going on. And so I'm always open to like collaborating with other people, and other, other initiatives. But that's basically my presentation. So I will open it up for questions now.
Okay, super. Thank you so much, Dr. Felix, for that elaborate presentation on the awesome work that you're doing at the University of Juba. And also like very much highly qualified and interlinked to different institutions. So what I'll do right now, I'll open it up for questions so we can take some few questions and some comments from the audience. And I think this idea, since this is a very nascent and new field, we can have as many people kind of contribute with their comments, and then we can take it up from there. Yeah. So you just raise your hand, you can just say your name and then your question or your comment, and then we can take it up from there.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Mine is just a simple question. Know that Dr. Felix is talking specifically to students of University of Juba, but I would like to know if the IA incubation lab is open to public, like people who are not students but are interested. Is it possible for them to attend to that? Thank you.
Okay, super. I think we can take one or two.
You want me to answer that one first? Hello.
Everyone, my name is Elda Murray. I'm the HR professional. Thank you so much for the great presentation. Mine is just to ask, is there any regulatory framework guiding AI in South Sudan?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. A question on regulatory framework. Anyone else? Okay, so I'll hand it to Dr. Felix to chip in on those two questions.
Okay, so I think I'll start with the first question, the lab one. Let me just make sure that I understood it correctly. Basically, the question is the incubation lab, is it currently open to people outside of the university? Is that correct? That's the question, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So currently it's not open to the public, but we're pushing toward that right now. I think the biggest issue right now, especially with the financial situation in South Sudan, that makes things a lot more difficult. But actually, I have not announced this, but I'll share this with you guys at some point later. So essentially, one of the things that I also do at University of Juba is we have this event called that we do every year. And there's one that is coming up. So I'm actually going to be traveling to South Sudan very soon, probably around June timeframe. So we'll have an event, and usually this event is like a multiple day event. It's almost like a 1 week event where we will have workshops, we will have student presentations, and then we will have awards. So last year we did this; it was covered all over the news in South Sudan. And so this year, like, this is one way of how we bring the community in. So the workshops, like for example, the event will be open to the entire community. Like people can come in and attend the workshops. You don't have to be a student. You can be from the public. So that's one way to engage with the public. But as far as the lab, what I can do, like from my side, I can push for more resources and try to make it available to the citizens in Juba. But again, that has to be approved by the administration. So but I'll push for that. I'll take your input as a feedback to the administration. Okay, so the other question is the regulatory framework, and actually, I don't know of. Sorry, was there something? Sorry. Okay, I think the other question was about regulatory. If there is any regulatory framework on AI.
Yes, that was the second question.
Yeah. So as of now, I'm not aware of any regulatory framework for AI that has been put in place.
Yeah.
But my hope is that I think through what you guys are doing and through what we're doing, I think at some point there will be a framework that will probably be put in place. Because I guess, for regulatory framework, so when you speak about regulatory framework, that's something that has to be involved with government, right? Because the government is the entity that regulates, the things that can happen. But as for like from our side, like currently my involvement is mostly in academic and industry. And so I don't really like do any regulation, rather more is like education or solving problems. Okay, does that answer your question? I want to make sure that I'm not leaving question unanswered.
Okay, let me check if there is one more question before we kind of allow Dr. Felix to end the presentation.
Okay.
I think maybe one question from my side.
Okay.
I think one of the questions that I would probably have is how does your work relate to the private sector or the work for private sector development in South Sudan here? Like, is there any other linkages between the lab and some of the work that you're doing?
Currently, we don't have any. We're not interfacing with people in private sector at the moment. I think probably the only collaboration is with the STEM Center. So the STEM Center does the STEM center does some robotics training for high school students. And so we are actually collaborating with them because, you know, my efforts focus on building, focused on building AI algorithms, but with, you know, with integrating them into smart devices, we can also involve, like, you know, the robotics effort and try to build, you know, sort of like what I was mentioning earlier, intelligence robotic things. But that's kind of like the only maybe private sector thing that we're involved in. But aside from that, I don't know of any yet.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Felix, for the presentation and also for gracing our event today.
Yeah.
I also want to extend my heartfelt gratitude from myself and the team and the attendees. We'll definitely engage with you further through the follow-up from this event, and we can see how we can incorporate this all together.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for the invitation, and, you know, yeah, let's keep in touch.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Okay, thank you. Bye.